I'm not used to speaking in front of a bunch of people, so if you can't hear me, just let me know, and I'll try and talk. You can't hear me? Okay. I will try and talk loud. Do that? I'm good without a microphone. So, for those of you who don't know me, I am Jill Smith. I am the preschool director at Fletcher, and I'm basically in charge of finding volunteers to work with the kids ages preschool and younger, and I'm on the children's ministry, and we actually work as a team and help each other with whatever we need. But I primarily deal with the children preschool age and down. I have 3 kids of my own, 2 girls and a boy. Savannah is 8, Tabitha is 7, and Foy is 4. My husband, Paul Smith, is a deacon here, and I think I've been going to Fletcher for 15 years. It's been a while. So I really like what I do here, and I really like the program that we have here. And I appreciate you all coming today. I know some of you have just been to a child safety class, and Tara teaches that, and she does a great job. And this is a little bit more about the policies that we have while you're working with the kids on Sundays during church, which doesn't get hit on a lot in Tara's class. And I'm also going to go over sexual abuse that occurs in a church, because that is a very specific area that sexual abuse happens, because it is in a church and the dynamics of a church setting. If you have not signed in, please sign your name so I won't chase you and you'll have to do this again. And the sign-up sheet is right over there. So 10 years ago, I was buying meth and crack and cocaine and marijuana and pills and whatever else I could get my hands on. But it wasn't for the reasons you think. I was an undercover GBI agent, so I was not spending the state's money. But I had been doing it for about 10 years, and I had worked a specific investigation in Brantley County for a year and a half. And the way it worked was you were undercover in that area for a certain amount of time, and then after you got all the people you wanted to get, buy drugs from, we would have a big arrest at the end. And I had gone to a house to buy crystal meth from 3 boys who were, I call them boys because I'm old, but they were about 18 to 20 years old, and they were all high. There were no women there, and there were 2 6-year-old girls there. And I had to buy meth from them and walk out of that house. And I got so convicted that something bad was going to happen to those 2 girls, I just could not leave them there. We had to do something. And it hadn't been that obvious to me before, because there'd been their parents there. And at the end of the investigation, we handled the children with defects and stuff like that. But at this time, I could not, with a clear Christian conscience, leave those kids in that house with those boys. First of all, they're high, they're selling drugs, who knows who's going to come in there to buy drugs from them. And meth heightens sexual intentions. So I bugged my boss that afternoon. I said, you have to do something with these kids. I can't do this anymore. I will ruin the whole year-long investigation to save these 2 kids. So we did do a few things, and we made it safer for them. Again, I don't know where they are today, but I couldn't just leave them there. Bad people do bad things. There was another time where I went to buy pills from an 18-year-old boy, and I walked into his house, and his father was bent over a stove that was on, overdosing, and he was 18 years old selling me pills, and he had been convicted of child molestation and rape at 15 years old. And so it felt good to buy, drugs from him and put him in jail. And again, bad people do bad things. So I was just giving you a little taste of what people think of people who do sexual abuse. They're bad. They're not among us. They're not with us. They don't go to church and that sort of thing. I'm going to be referencing this book. It's called Tear Down the Walls of Silence, and it's very, very informative. Sexual abuse in a church is very hush-hush, and nobody wants to think about it or talk about it, but it's a very good place for predators to find victims. And I'll go into a variety of reasons. The author is Dale Ingram, and he met his wife in college. I think they went to a Baptist college, and he is a pastor now, but she revealed to him that her father, who was a pastor, had sexually molested her from age 9 to 18 when she went to church. And he never stayed at a church very long. He would go from church to church, maybe 6 months here, 6 months there. And so their family didn't talk about it. I don't think she ever confronted him or her mother or her 8 brothers or let anybody know what was happening until at the age of 72, her dad was accused of sexual abuse of his 14-year-old foster grandchild. And so at that point, they'd had enough, and it all came out. I'm going to read a passage from the book real quick, and this is written by the author concerning his father-in-law who did the abuse. And, well, I'll just read it, and you'll know the impact. A lot of churches don't have to deal with sexual abuse, so a lot of churches don't know what to do when confronted with it. The deacons shifted in their seats uncomfortable. It was November of 2005, and they sat together in a meeting with my father-in-law, who had just been found as having molested not only his foster granddaughter, but a number of other girls. The deacons had never faced a problem like this before. If you're really repentant, they said, maybe you can eventually return to ministry. You won't be able to minister to women and children again, but you might be able to have a ministry with men. He raised his eyebrows, quizzical. I'm not ready to be a homosexual, he said. When I first heard that, I rolled my eyes, thinking he just wanted to make every statement into a provocative sexual statement. But then I realized there was much more to it. This statement was a revelation of his thought processes. I'm not ready to be a homosexual meant his entire so-called ministry was oriented around sex. I'm not ready to be a homosexual meant the purpose of his ministry was to gain access to victims. Ministry was about having sex with girls, not preaching the gospel. It was about himself, not others. It was about sin, not righteousness. So, one of the problems with abuse in a church setting is that it's easy for abusers to find their victims and get away with it. Churches attract predators for different reasons, and Voyle Glover, who's the author of Protecting Your Church Against Sexual Predators, cites the following reasons. Little or no screening of workers. People can just volunteer, because we always need volunteers, so they just desperate for anyone to work with the kids. Tendency to see only the good in people. This is a church. Good people go to church. Bad people don't go to church. We're uncritical in acceptance of a person's confession of faith. We are here to talk about God, and they believe in God, so they won't do anything bad. There are lots of children at a church, and again, predators go where there is prey. They have frequent and unfettered access to kids. There's kids programs all over the place. They're not trained, and there's a tendency to cover up or minimize a crime. A church is a welcoming, forgiving, grace-having institution where good people of faith gather, and no one wants to accuse anyone of something as horrible as sexual abuse. And abusers develop their skills over time and know exactly how to work with adults to seem innocent and how to work with children to gain their trust and be able to abuse them. Tara talked about some of the things that abusers do to groom children. They flatter them, they buy them gifts, there's innocent physical contact, tickling, sit on my lap, let's play tag, that sort of thing. Finding chores or special assignments that allow abusers to be alone with a victim. She's going to go help me in the closet with supplies and organize things with me. And bad things can happen to children in a minute. It doesn't take all day long to happen. And in a church setting, a lot of the reasons why it doesn't get reported or talked about is because, and I'm not saying this is with our church by any means, because I believe that Fletcher does a good job of holding people accountable for their actions and their sins, I suppose. They don't want to tarnish the institution by going public with the abuse. They don't want people to think this church is bad because of these things that have happened. And they don't tell law enforcement because they want to keep it in-house. The church will deal with it, but that is not the answer. When it comes to children, the police, law enforcement needs to step in and do their job. When law enforcement does not step in, a lot of times the abuse will be moved to a different church, and it will continue until this person is stopped by the police. There's blind, if it was a pastor that was doing the abusing like it was in this book, there's blind loyalty to pastors or ministers, ministry leaders, and people think, well, if you question him, you are questioning Christ himself. They go together. They're one and the same, and they are not one and the same. No one is Christ but Christ. No one is as good as Christ but Christ. But people hold them up to such a high standard that that's what they believe, and who are they to question Christ? The church does not want to lose members. They don't want this getting out and people leave because they want a full congregation. And they don't want to hurt the cause of Christ, which this could jade people into thinking that God is not in this church if this bad thing has happened, but God is in the church. It may not be in this person. And Christians are supposed to forgive, and if abusers say, I'm sorry, I won't do it again, well, I have to forgive you. Well, you can forgive people all day long, but they do not have to be in your church around kids. Totally separate issues. And then another aspect is the accusation is not taken seriously. A child reports being abused to someone and they say, oh, they'd never do that, you're just making that up. You know, that's so detrimental to the victim, but it's also enabling the abuser to continue abusing. So this is a hard subject to talk about, and there is a policy here that if there is a known registered sex offender, that we're not going to turn them away from the church, but they will have an escort 100% of the time, and it'll probably be a deacon or something like that, but it has never have been put into place. I know there is a policy, but I'm not sure what it is, and I'm not going to go into it. Pastor Chris, if you want to know the details on that, you can ask him. And it's so detrimental to do it in a church because you are here to bring these children to Christ, to save people's souls, and then you have someone coming in here hurting these children, and if someone maybe suspects and doesn't tell because, gosh, who wants to tell on someone who's, you don't even know if it's true. And it may ruin their life, or it may save a life of the victim, but the victim will think, well, God has not been with me during this because he wouldn't let me get hurt. So you may lose a soul through this abuse. So if you do suspect someone of, if you just have a weird feeling someone's not doing something they should, or just, if you just have a weird feeling, or see something, it can be between an adult and a child, two children, a teenager and a child, please come tell Pastor Chris or me. It's going to be confidential, and we'll handle it the way we have set up in our policy, but please don't let it go, because it may be nothing and it may not be nothing. So just keep that in mind. And I know that it is a horrible thing to even think someone you may know and respect doing, but people come here to be liked, to put up a facade in order to get to their victims. So you got to keep that in mind as well. Ephesians 5:11 to 12 reminds Christians to have no fellowship with the unfaithful works of darkness, but rather expose them, for it is shameful even to speak of those things which are done by them in secret. And God wants us to save these children, and by letting someone know what you may suspect or feel uncomfortable about will save these children. So that is basically all the scary stuff I have for you. And I'm going to go over some of the policies that have helped us to not have scary stuff happen here. So if you want to get the teenage workers, you can come back in for the policy. If anyone has any questions, real quick. So Tara went over some of the policy, and I'm just going to go very specifically over some of the very, very, very important policies. And I might add that today was a prime example of why we have these policies in place. During the church hour, we lock the children's doors, so no one can just walk in if there's no one standing there, and there is a bell to let people in. Well, I had unlocked the doors to come over here and drop some stuff off to go back over there, and got a text from Crystal saying there was a weird man standing outside the children's building, and Nick was standing there making sure he didn't come in. So I went around and I talked to him, and he did not understand what I was telling him. He was not, I don't know if this is offensive to anyone, I apologize, but he seemed so schizophrenic or something like that that he couldn't understand my words. So I told him that he had to leave this building area because it was the children's building, and I said the sanctuary is over there, pointing to the front door, and I had to tell him a few times to go ahead and leave, and if he wanted the sanctuary, he could go over there. Then I raced through here to get Perry and Paul, my husband, to meet him at the door in case he actually came. And yes, he actually came, and Nick had followed him there. And I went back to the children's building, and the doors were subsequently locked again. But that is why, and he walked down the road. So he's not here anymore, for those of you who have kids here, and Paul is in the other building, so they're safe and sound. But that is why we have these policies, and a lot of them seem easy, but they're not followed, and they need to be followed. And today, I guess God put that man here to help me with this speech, because that is the reason why I am going over this stuff. I'm not going to hit everything, and if you want a copy of this, I will gladly give you a copy of this, but I'm going to go through the most important ones. Minors who volunteer have to be at least 13 and gone through the necessary training. They have to be with an 18-year-old or older to work with the kids, or a parent. Amy has Emily and Sarah soon, and they work in the preschool room, I think. And we have some other parents who have their teenagers working as well, volunteering. Volunteers are required to complete regular training, such as this, even though I know it's not the funnest thing to come to. But we do update things every once in a while, and Pastor Chris told me to scare y'all today. So I hope I did a little bit, but not too much. Here's a big one, and it's hard to follow because I'm still reaching out for volunteers, but we have to have 2 workers at all time with each child. 2 workers with every single child. Whether you have 1 child in a room for early praise team practice, you have to have 2 people with them who have been through this training. It can't be someone who, well, your husband's supposed to work with you, but your mom's here from California, she can come in with me. No, she can't. She has to have been through this training, through the background check, and be approved to work with Fletcher kids. And it is hard. Every once in a while, someone has to step out of the room for something. But we are trying very hard to have a hall monitor, such as right now, Paul is in there, and they are there to step in or stand at the door while somebody else steps out. But we need 2 people. And I'm trying really, really hard to have 3 or more people in a room at a time, because that'll make life super easy. But 2 people in a room with a child, any number of children. If child abuse is suspected in the home, if you see some weird things that you don't think are quite right, the Pastor Chris, please notify him in confidence. It will remain in confidence, but we went over that pretty much a few minutes ago. Please do not use your cell phones unless there's an emergency. I have kids that I have a cell phone. If it rings, it's usually something has happened to one of them. So I do understand having cell phones in the room, but we do have problems with some of the younger workers kind of staying on their phone, and parents don't want to come in and see workers texting someone while their kids are running crazy around the room. So let's avoid cell phones if we can. The top half of the classroom doors, unless they have a window in it, which all ours do, must remain partially open at all times. Children are in the classroom. And this applies to infants as well. Even if they're sleeping, we always leave it cracked a little bit. This protects you from any unwanted suspicion of anything. Please do not toss or throw children in the air when you're playing with them. Do not poke, prod, or tickle children. Let's just have a kind of hands-off approach. I mean, kids will come up to you and hug you. I can't deny a cute little infant squeezy hug. But, you know, a nice one-armed hug is great. Classroom check-in and check-out. We have computers to check our kids in. We don't have a official check-out system yet, and I'm working on that. But please do not release these kids to brothers or sisters or siblings, only to parents, and only directly to the parents. If you see the parent talking to someone in the hall, wait for the parent to come to the classroom to get their child, because that happened today too, to a visitor. But all worked out, and now I'm reminding you. Please make every effort to do what the parent instructs, like especially for the younger kids. Some have allergies, some don't want them to have snacks, which we don't give snacks all through the day, but we have one that's gluten-free, so we need to be careful about what we give. And there's allergy signs, and there's allergy stickers, allergy notes on their stickers when they come in. So just do your best to abide by what the parent says. And this goes with infants a lot as well, because how long do you want me to let your baby cry? A lot of the people who work with infants are moms, so we can hold out for a crying baby as long as we need to, but some parents don't want their baby to cry for 15 minutes. So just make sure you do what the parent wants. Make sure you give babies their bottle and not someone else's bottle. Make sure everything is labeled. I think last year we had a switch up of milk, breast milk, so let's make sure, and neither baby was happy, so let's just make sure everything's labeled so that does not happen. Please return diapered kids in clean diapers. Just check them real quick right before that parents pick them up. We've had a few that went the whole time without having a diaper change somehow. Probably there was a lot of kids and it got a little crazy, but let's hand them back smelling great. Always have a Christ-like attitude when working with the children. I'm not going to go into discipline too much because that's where Ms. Torrey's going to talk about, but it can get frustrating at times with some children, and just remember you are in church teaching these children about Christ, so we need to try our best to act like Christ. When you change a baby, don't leave them on the changing table ever, because even though they may not look like they can roll over, heaven forbid they decide to, at that time, always be with a child on a changing table. Bathrooms. So the older kids, I'm going to let her, I guess there's an escort to the bathroom. So there's a girls and boys bathroom in the children's building, and
try about 2 at a time.
Yeah, an adult walks them down the hallway just to make sure they don't run out the door or whatever. But for toddlers, there's bathrooms in most of the rooms, and you have to supervise their bathroom visit. Never leave the child alone. What I do is I crack the door and stand in front of the crack, and if they need help, then I can help them. But don't just shut the door and let them go, because bad things could happen if you do that, but you don't want another child walking in on that child as well. So you need to be with the child while they're using the bathroom or right outside the door. And don't shut the door all the way while you're in there with them, because we don't want anyone to suspect anything. We do give snacks. We have goldfish and Cheerios and animal crackers, and we do that during the church hour, pretty much right after Sunday school. So we're going to try and only give snacks then. I guess there had been a practice when things get a little crazy, we put food in their mouth to calm them down, because I do that too. But the snacks are going too quick, and they really don't need to eat the entire morning on a Sunday. So only after the change from Sunday school to church, we'll give them some snacks. The wellness policy. So there is so much funk going around early this year, and people are posting things on Facebook about their child being sick and then coming to church the next day, but you know that child has thrown up the day before, and you don't want your child getting what that child has, even though, they seem better. If you ever have a situation like this and don't feel comfortable telling the parent they cannot leave their child, come get me. I will do it for you, because that's my job. It's not a fun thing to do, but that's my job, so I will do it. And I don't want everyone else getting sick or a worker getting sick. So the basic rules are, if they can't come if they've had a fever within the last 24 hours, and giving Tylenol to make it go away does not mean it is gone. Vomiting or diarrhea within the last 24 hours, untreated pink eye or another eye infection, if there's symptoms of chicken pox or fist disease or hand, foot, and mouth, that spreads like wildfire in the younger rooms, because everybody puts everything in their mouth. And even if it looks like it and you have no idea if it is, just better safe than sorry. Sore throat any communicable disease, croup, a common cold. Now, every kid has a runny nose, but if it is green and gross and running down their face, come get me and I will send the kid away. And this goes for volunteers too. If you're sick, you know, it's hard to get volunteers, but don't come because we don't want our kids getting sick too, and we'll find someone to replace you. In the event a child is injured or has a boo-boo or something minor, there are boo-boo reports, and they're in the first aid kit that is under the computers back there, and I have to make sure they're there because I don't think we've used them in a while. But it's just to let parents know that, yeah, he did bump his head, but he's fine in case something else happens later in the day. If something big happens, someone gets hit and their nose starts bleeding, which is pretty serious, please let me know or whoever is in charge. I'm usually here, but I can handle that and contact the parent, and we can go from there. The other big thing is room cleanliness, and this goes back to the disease-ridden kid thing that my kids bring home every day, and it really does make a difference just Cloroxing everything with a Clorox wipe, letting it dry, wipe down the table and chairs with Clorox wipes, wash the toys off. If they can be picked up and put in the sink, please wash them off. All laundry that was used, whether it was a bib, changing pad, a sheet. We have a laundry basket in the infant room, and we do laundry once a week, and we have plenty of extras. So if there's any laundry that needs to be done, just stick it in the basket in the infant room, and we'll clean it up and hopefully return it to the right room. There's a drying rack in the infant room for toys, but then there's just clean the toys and you can put them on. There's a little pad by the sink. You can leave them there to dry. Please sweep the floors and vacuum if needed after every time kids are in there, because the crumbs that accumulate do attract roaches and mice, and we don't want that in there. And please take your trash out with you. We did have someone on Sundays who did it for all the rooms, but we are going to do it ourselves after each shift now. And there is a dumpster way in the back there, but if you go through the building, there is a trash can right there, like a big outdoor trash can. You can put your trash in there, and I think it's one of the deacons' responsibilities to make sure the big trash is taken to the dumpster. So if you don't want to mess with the dumpster, just put it in the outdoor trash can. In an event of an emergency, there are posted signs in every room of where you need to go. Each classroom needs to go. I'll just briefly go over it. Make sure before you leave the room, you count how many kids you have. And make sure when you get to the safe spot, which is the soccer fields back there, you have the same amount of kids. And if you can grab the roster with you on the way out, if that's feasible, great. But most everyone knows what kids are in there, so hopefully you'll be able to keep track of them. And this is like if you have to there's a fire or something, you need to get out of the building now type thing, and you can't grab a roster. There is a roster on the door that you can just peel off if you have to and go. The infants will go out the playground exit, the walkers, the front door exit, which is the door you go in and out of. The toddlers, the playground exit, and preschool, the front door exit. And you go to the soccer field, and when I or Chris can release kids to parents, when everything has settled down, we'll have to have a sheet that says, I have picked up my child from the soccer field, and that can be easy to do at the spur of the moment if we need to. And again, we only release the child to a parent or guardian in case of an emergency. I think that is all that I have. And one other point to make is that if you can't come for your shift, you can post it on the Fletcher volunteer site on Facebook, and you can, a lot of times people just switch Sundays with each other, or someone will just, you say, hey, I need someone to work for me because my child is sick last minute. Let me know, but we have got to have these rooms covered because, again, 2 people need to be with a child at all times for all sorts of reasons. But that's really the most important thing. And again, case in point today of what happened at the children's building. This is why we have these rules, and a lot of times we think nothing is going to happen, but strangely enough, things do happen at the best times, apparently, to give a talk about. So if you have any questions. Okay, thank you very much. Tori Hennig is going to talk a little bit about behavioral concerns and issues with the kids you work with and how to handle that.
Oh, thanks, Jill. Oh, what a sad, broken world we live in. I'm still like shaking. But anyway, hey guys, I'm Tori. I'm on the kids ministry, and I handle children's church and the older kids. So I will try to keep this pretty short. I know a lot of you are pros at it, so we just want to hit on a few things. Just want to say thank you for volunteering and helping teach our kids. We wouldn't have a children's ministry if it wasn't for you guys, because we can't do it ourselves. I know a lot of your kids are in there, but still, thank you for teaching other kids. So we're just going to talk a little bit about classroom management, keeping them focused, staying on task. Thankfully, we don't have any, that I know of, any major discipline issues as far as hitting, bullying, anything like that. So if you do have any of those issues, come see me, come see Jill, Melody, any of the children's ministry team, and we can handle that separately with you. Okay, so main one is if you have a problem with a child, whether it be a major issue or a smaller issue, we want to try to not embarrass the children. We don't want to call them out in front of everybody if we can help it. For several reasons, we don't want to embarrass them, but we also don't want to create that power struggle with them. So just walk over, address it with them quietly, or just move on and then pull them to the side, later and talk to them. Now, I don't mean like, Bobby, stop talking. Shh, listen. I don't mean like that. I mean, if they're being disrespectful or, smacking another child, something like that. Just try to avoid a big scene if we can. Another thing with keeping kids on task and not chitty-chatty, I have found that if you write a time schedule on the board or a piece of paper, if you don't have a board in the classroom with kind of the agenda, we're going to do snack, then we're going to go play, then we're going to have lesson, something like that, it really helps them to see what's expected of them and to cut down on the, when's snack, when are we going home, when is this? They already have that expectation of what is going to happen. Same goes for rules in the class, how they are to behave. If you write it out and they can see it, have found that helps a lot too. Let's see. if you have a large group, such as children's church or Wednesday night group, you may want to think about breaking them into smaller groups. I know this is hard if there's only 2 people, but you can still be a part of the same lesson. Just split them up, maybe designate a team leader per group, and tell them to make sure their team is listening, quiet, doing their work, or paying attention, that sort of thing. This also gives the rowdy ones something to do, a job, and that helps them to be involved in the lesson and cut down on the chattiness. We do boy versus girl a lot. They like that, or team A and team B. If you have 2 friends that may need to be separated, you can separate them that way too. Let's see. A big one is redirecting their attention. If you wear yourself out saying shh, 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 listen for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, however long you have them. So especially with little kids, so instead of saying, Bobby, be quiet, listen, pay attention, listen, they're still have what they were going to say on the brain, and they got to get it out. So try, hey, Bobby, can you pass this out for me? Hey, can you read number 4? Read this verse. Bobby, what do you think about the verse we just read? Try to just move their attention from what they're doing that's just being disruptive. In children's church, we like to use a little saying to kind of redirect them. We do waterfall. The teacher will say waterfall, and the kids will say shh. So that's another good tool with the little kids. You can also, I know some people say flat tire, and the kids say shh, just to kind of refocus them on you. I thought somebody gave me this idea, and Melody uses it, and Miss Becky uses it in VBS, is instead of imagination spray, the little kids, you can try quiet spray or focus spray. Just bring a spray bottle of water and kind of give them a spritz. That's something fun, but, kind of brings them back. Especially if you have a game or something, time to wrap up. Let's see. Another tip is to try to keep, especially, children's church or Sunday school, if you have a lesson, try to keep idle time or dead time to a minimum. You don't want a lot of just dead time. That gives them time to chat, misbehave, throw a chair, whatever. So you want to make sure you have some extra questions, an extra game. If, the sermon's running a little late, good song, something like that, just to kind of keep them going. If you are all out, you can't think of anything, do books of the Bible, do Wednesday night memory verses, just something to kind of keep them going for a little while longer. If you are still having trouble with keeping them quiet and engaged in the lesson, you may want to try a reward system. A really easy one that I like to use too, if you have a board in your class, just kind of keep a scoreboard. On one side we'll say doing great, and then on the other side we'll say oops, and I'll just kind of keep a tally throughout the lesson, and whichever side gets the most tallies, they'll either have to help me wipe down the chairs, clean the room, or on the plus side, if they were super good, we might have a little extra snack, or we'll play an extra game, something like that. I try not to use candy or something like that as a reward. Again, it goes back with the allergies. We have kids that have allergies. We may not be aware of them. So we want to keep it to the goldfish, the graham crackers, Cheerios, the approved snacks. They do like games, something like that. And every now and then we do give candy, which is fine, but just on every Sunday or something like that, maybe not. And no gum, please, as a treat. It ends up in hair and on our freshly new carpet in the kids' corner, and it's just a mess. So if you can refrain, please, no gum. Dum Dums are great. They love Dum Dums, and they're pretty safe allergy-wise. Also for the younger toddlers, preschool, if you don't want to do the points or you don't have a board, fill in a jar with the little fuzzy pom-poms. They love those. You can put them in if they're good, take them out if they were too rowdy. Popsicle sticks, put one in a cup, something like that is really good. But as Jill was saying, the most important thing is keep the parents involved and up to date. I know a lot of your parents and your kids are in there, but still, you want to be kept in the loop, and not just on bad behavior, on good behavior. Bobby had a really good day. He really enjoyed the lesson. You want to give him that feedback. We're here to help you as parents. We're here to aid you. You're the star of the show. We're just here to help. So we want to keep them in the loop. As well as bad behavior. Bobby was a little chatty today. Just want to let you know, or Bobby hit so-and-so. Just wanted to, let you know. So we want to do that with them. And also let them know what you're doing in class. This will help them prepare the kids at home. Hey, we're doing memory verses, lessons, that way they can prepare the kids that they may have to sit, they're going to have to listen, obey the teacher, that sort of stuff. And if you need some help, let us know. And with that being said, we know we're not all professional teachers. So if you need help, you're not alone in this. We don't want you to feel like you signed up and good luck. So if you need help with a lesson, if you need help behavioral wise, if you need help classroom management wise, please ask myself, Jill, Melody, Miss Valerie, anybody on the team will be happy to help you with anything. Crafts, just ideas, anything. We're always here for y'all. Just let us know. And just remember, the ultimate goal is trying to establish these kids to have their own relationship with Jesus. We're not always going to be here to give them a lesson or give them things to study. So we want to help them have their own relationship. That's what we're here for. So that's about all I have, except for just remembering to please refrain from cell phones and stuff like that with the older kids as well. Especially when you get into youth and they may have their own cell phone. Just remind them to leave those in the car. And even for the older kids, please have 2 adults or 2 helpers per group. And I think that's it. Thank you guys again.